I think that press conference at the end of the game by Razor and by Scott Barrett indicated a lot to me what we saw in the second half from the team. Passive communication, no communication, a lack of desire, a lack of accountability. We've got to see the All Black structure and the culture in the All Black team get back to being accountable men again, tough Kiwi blokes that are getting in there and ripping the balls off their opponents out. That's what we've got to see again. And we're not seeing it in this All Black team. So I think we need to drop all these vocabulary around soft and caring and all this other fluffy stuff and get back to what makes New Zealand rugby the toughest, hardest rugby playing team in the world that we used to be. And hey, a huge thank you to everyone who joined the live chat after the All Blacks and South Africa game and the Australian and Argentine game on the weekend. It was fantastic to have you all there and having a good chat about the game. If you want me to keep doing those, I'll do them after each of the major games. So just let me know in the comments today whether that's a thing you want to keep going. I love doing it, so happy to do more of it. Now, talking about live chats, last week I started a weekly live chat show on a Tuesday evening. That's for people in South Africa, UK, Ireland and Europe. And this week it's going to be at 6 p.m. your time in South Africa. So I'll put the times on the screen here so you can check it out. Now listen, I've listened to all the feedback from down under. I'm going to do a second live chat. It's going to be on Wednesday morning for Kiwis, Aussies, anyone in Fiji, Samoa, Tonga, Papua New Guinea and all over that part of the world. It's going to be at 7 a.m. in the east coast of Australia. That means it'll be 9 a.m. in Auckland and across New Zealand. And for all our friends in Papua New Guinea, Tonga and Samoa and Fiji, you can join in as well. So there we go. This week we're going to have 2 live chat shows. You tune into the one which is better for you from a time zone perspective. And we'll talk all things rugby in that show. So join me for that. I'm having a bit of trouble with YouTube not showing my videos to too many people. So if you do hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, you will be notified every time I drop a video, and that could help you out and it could definitely help me out as well. Okay, let's get into the video now. Enough of talking about that stuff, and we're going to be talking about the All Blacks and the Springboks, that fantastic game that was played in the Cake Tin in Wellington on Saturday night. I've had a little bit of time to get some sleep, think about it a little bit more, read a lot of your comments, and this is my feedback to you all. So first of all, I'll start off by saying to all the South African rugby fans, I hope you've been celebrating, enjoying that amazing win. It was well deserved and you played some champagne rugby in that last half of that game. It was fantastic. And to all my All Black fellow buddies, I hope you're over it a little bit. I know that 99.9% of you are respectful and humble and using your humility to congratulate our South African brothers. And for the rest of the Kiwis that have that irritable behaviour, well, we won't talk about you too much in this video. So what a fantastic game it was, and now that I've had time to talk about it with you all on the live chat and think about it a little bit more, I've come up with my kind of post-mortem, if you like, on this particular game. There was a lot of things to look at. And I'll start off with a score. It was 43 points to 10 in favour of the South Africans. Of course, the All Blacks led 10-7 at half-time. That's something we've got to take into consideration throughout this video, I think. And then the South Africans came back storming in the second half with an amazing performance, 36 points to 0. And again, the All Blacks showing that their second half performance, as I've been saying in a lot of my videos this year, is just not up to scratch. But we've got to look a little bit deeper and understand why that perhaps is going on. So in the first half, if we look at it, I thought, well, I don't know if you're like me. When you see the team standing up for the national anthems, are you trying to gauge their intensity and whether or not they're in the moment and they're really fired up to go? I seem to catch myself doing that before every game actually starts. I look at the faces of the players as the cameras pan down through the line during the national anthem singing, and I try and kind of talk myself into a state of, yeah, the All Blacks are ready. They look like they're really on their game, or, oh, the South Africans might look a little bit off their game today. It's a stupid little game I probably pay for myself before the game even starts, but I bet you some of you do that as well. Anyway, the game got underway and I thought the South Africans really started well. And I talked about this in my preview video, didn't I? I said, look, the Springboks will need to get off to a good start stop for the All Blacks from scoring early points, because that gives them their mojo in a lot of their games. And if the Springboks were able to do that, then they would really be in the fight. And I felt that's what the Springboks did in this particular game, and they did it very, very well. So for that first 10 minutes or so, it was all possession and territory to the box. They were putting a lot of pressure on the All Blacks, but credit to the All Blacks, I thought, as well. They came up with some good defensive patterns. They also came up with some good scrambling on defence when it looked like the Springboks were going to get through and score some points. And if it wasn't for Kobus Reinhardt with a little bit of a knock-on in one of those plays, then maybe South Africa would have got over and scored an early try. But I thought the All Blacks came back very well in the beginning of that first half, and they kind of got themselves back into the game. They showed their intent, and they came up with that brilliant try to Leroy Carter, who was, of course, starting his first game in the All Black jersey. So that would have given him a lot of confidence as well. Even though he didn't have too much to do after Tupou Vai passed the ball out to him, he had to basically put it down over the line. But it's one of those things that just gives you that little bit of sensation. Yes, I'm part of this All Black team. I've scored a try on debut, and I'm sure that would have given him a lot of motivation. But it was a very good build-up to the try, I thought, from the All Blacks. They really put a lot of pressure on the Springboks. They went from one side of the field to the other, very crisp, clean passing throughout the back line. And we saw Tupou Vai standing out there to give the final pass on to Leroy Carter. Damien McKenzie was able to get the conversion over just, and the All Blacks went out to a lead. And I thought that was against the script so far in the game, because I thought the Springboks were really holding the cards up until that stage. And maybe that was a little bit of a signal of what was going to come later in the game, because the Springboks were really, really on tune, I thought. Now, despite the All Blacks scoring that first try, we saw the intent from the Springboks, didn't we? We saw Jasper Wiese, first of all, really including himself in the play. He was making a difference. But we only got to the 9th minute of the game, and things went very south for the Kiwis at that stage, when Noah Hotham limped off the field. And as a lot of you said in the live chat, my heart must have missed a beat when I saw that Finlay Christie was going to come on. Yeah, in all seriousness, it wasn't good, of course, to see Noah Hotham go off. It was an HIA injury, but it looks like he hurt his ankle at the same time. And only after 9 minutes, and I immediately thought then that we were going to be in trouble, not just because Finlay Christie was coming on, but what Noah Hotham actually offers the All Blacks. He gives us that dynamic running game from halfback. He would have tested out the South African inside channel defence, and he would have given them something different to look at. And when Finlay Christie came on, that wasn't the case anymore. So the defensive line for South Africa were then able to focus their energy on the Kiwi inside backs and stopping their open expansive play. So it just took away one of the pieces of the equation for the Springboks to think about when it came to their defensive line, because they knew probably that Finlay Christie wasn't going to do those darting, sniping runs from halfback. So that was a big moment of change in the game for me. And we saw plenty others in that first half, didn't we? As far as players going off the field, it was just like carnage. And we're seeing this so much throughout the Rugby Championship, aren't we? We're seeing a lot of HIAs. We're seeing a lot of ankles being done. We're just seeing players in bad situations and having to go off the field. And Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu was another one. So South Africa lost a number of players in that first half. We saw RG Schneemann coming on. And this was another interesting point as well, because as the South Africans lost some of their players, they had to make sure the continuity in their game plan was going to continue. So that's something that I give them a lot of credit for in this game, in addition to the way that they finished the game. When those reserves came on at a very unexpected time in the first half, I thought they did very, very well. So you don't lose a guy like Lut de Jager and go to a different game plan, because RG Schneemann came on and did a fantastic job. I thought he's a great player. I love RG, of course, with all his attributes in terms of offloads, etc. But South Africa just had to adjust, and all of a sudden Manie Libbok was on the field. So we didn't see what Sasha Feinberg was ultimately going to do. Fassi went off at fullback, so we saw another change there for the Springboks. I hope Fassi's well. I saw him in a moon boot during the game, so that wasn't too good. Maybe someone can give me an update on how he's going. But when Manie Libbok came on, I thought, well, okay, is this where we're going to see the change from the Springboks? And it was. He went to a bit of a kicking strategy, and it worked straight away, didn't he? He started catching the All Blacks under pressure. And again, this high ball competition from the All Blacks has been something they haven't dealt with throughout this Rugby Championship. And it's definitely something I took a note of to say, yeah, this is one of the areas that is a current weakness of this All Black team, their competitive attitude and their ability to be able to manage the high ball is horrific so far during this rugby championship. That's what I'll put it down to. So yeah, I thought a lot of those players going off in the first half for South Africa was probably going to disrupt their momentum, but it didn't. So a lot of credit to the Springboks for that, because they were able to keep their game plan, although it changed a little bit with more kicking coming into it. But Mane Lebok was also showing his intent to run the ball, and we saw Damian Willemse, didn't we, early on in that game, combining with Canan Moodie and giving the All Blacks a hard time every time he got the ball. And this is why I like Damian Willemse and Canan Moodie more than Jesse Kriel and Damian Deolandi at the moment, because they bring something very different. And what it is, it's the way they run towards the line. If you look at Willemse, he's darting off both feet. It's almost like he's dancing at times. Canan Moodie does the same thing. And it really confuses the defensive line. Whereas if you've got someone like Damian Deolandi, they're always pushing up and going straight into the contact and not often using a sidestep to try and get around their player. So I thought that was a really, really big change in this game that we saw from the Springboks. And this gave the All Blacks a different defensive line to look at from their point of view, or to set up a defensive pattern in a different way. And that's where I thought Willemse and Moodie in particular had a field day against the All Blacks in the way that they presented themselves to the defensive line. Now, something else I picked up in this game was there was an almost try by Cheslin Kolbe, if you remember the one where he was sprinting in to score a try, and there was a fantastic tackle come in from Geordie Barrett who flipped him over, and Kolbe lost the ball, and it was a try-saving tackle for sure by Geordie Barrett. And this is one of the reasons, and we saw it throughout the rest of the game, and it's something that I'm going to talk about in this video, is that I think by having Geordie Barrett at fullback for the All Blacks, it brings so many good possibilities to that All Black final backline. And we saw it in that particular moment where Geordie Barrett's tackling as a big guy can really disrupt a winger who's going over to score a try. And I thought we saw throughout the game how Damian McKenzie is a liability at the fullback position for the All Blacks when starting a game. He's too small, so even when he was going up and contesting for high balls, the South Africans were absolutely smashing him and getting a turnover and putting the New Zealanders under a lot of pressure. So I've talked about it so many times, and so many of you don't like me saying it, but Damian McKenzie is not suited to start in this All Black team, particularly at fullback. And I would like to see Geordie Barrett go back there, 6'5", 90 plus kilos. He's bringing weight. He's great in the defensive line, as we saw that example against Kolbe. And he's got that huge boot on him, which can clear and get a good exit for the All Blacks, which we need on many, many occasions when we're down in our own red zone. So I thought that was one of the positional confirmations that came out of this game for me, in addition to Hotham going off and Finlay Christie coming on, and us not having the ability to give that South African defence a different look at our attacking zone through those inside channels, because Finlay Christie doesn't play that type of rugby. Now, one of the statements that's come out post-game is that everybody thinks that Cheslin Kolbe's intercept try was the turning point in the game, and the Springboks perhaps may not have won if he hadn't scored that try. It shifted the momentum. Well, I disagree. I don't think that was the case at all, and look at all those tries the Springboks scored in the second half. But I tell you what it did do, it highlighted the fact again that I talk about often in my videos about momentum in games. You've got to be able to deal with that, and I'm going to give the All Blacks some credit here, because after they scored that try, the Springboks, and that was a pass by Billy Proctor that was going out to set up what could have been a potential All Black try. We'll never know, because they didn't get the opportunity to do it. But after Cheslin Kolbe scored that try, it could have been easy for the All Blacks to change their strategy a bit and not be so intent on playing the open, expansive game. They didn't do that. They went straight back after the kickoff and carried on attempting to play that high-pace, high-intensity, expansive game. And I give them credit for that, because if you're going to stick to your game plan, then you've got to stick to it. And it's another way of building back momentum in the game. So I've talked about it a lot in my videos about the swings of momentum, how they deal with that. The South Africans definitely stopped the All Blacks' momentum at that stage by that try by Kolbe. But I think they dealt with it quite well in that particular instance, and they kept playing to their game plan, which was a good thing. So we got to half time and it was 10-7. So what was I thinking at half time? Well, my mind went back to Auckland and looking at that game in Eden Park, and South Africa came home the strongest in that particular game. And in this game, I thought up until that stage we'd seen South Africa doing less errors in their different plays that they were doing, and we were seeing much more creativity from the likes of Damian Willemse and Kanan Moody, and also out to the wingers Colby, Ethan Hooker. Hadn't really got into the game at that stage, but he was doing some good things. And it was just starting to show that Manie Libbok was really coming into his own as well. But in the forwards, the South Africans were doing very well. Their scrum was dominant again. The lineouts were on point. The All Blacks lineouts looked fragile at the best of times. And I thought Jasper Wiese was really making a difference to the Springboks team. You could see that. So I was thinking at halftime, this could be a problem for the All Blacks. They've only got a 3-point victory at this stage. And the South Africans are more than likely going to come home with a stronger force in the second half. The only thing that had been disrupted quite a lot for the Springboks was their bench. Their bench had been used early because of all those injuries in the first half. And I thought it was going to be interesting to see what Rassie was going to do in the second half to make sure that they could keep the pressure on. So the start of the second half was going to be really, really important for the Springboks, I thought, in this game. And so it was, because in the 43rd minute, it was a try to Cheslin Colby, and it got the Springboks off to that great start they wanted in the second half. And then we got to the 50th minute mark, and the floodgates just opened, didn't it? We saw try after try from the box in the second half, and weren't they some brilliant tries? Damian Willemse getting one, and if you looked at Willemse's try, it was very interesting. The pass came out from Manie Libbok. It wasn't a very good pass. It went high up over the back of the shoulder of Damian Willemse, and he almost had to get the ball from this kind of position, but he then steadied himself, and he still had to beat Quinn Tupaia and Leroy Carter, which he did do. And there were other couple of All Black tacklers, wannabe tacklers, coming across that never got to him. So Willemse got over for a very good try, and he showed a lot of skill, I thought, in scoring that try. He was able to bring that ball in from Manie Libbok's bad pass. He was able to set himself and keep his momentum going forward, and also beat the defensive line, which was very, very impressive. So I thought that was a really good try for Damian Willemse, and I also thought it taught us something about the All Blacks defensive line. So Quinn Tupaia and Leroy Carter, not good on that occasion. They didn't take care of Damian Willemse, and he was able to get over and score that really good try. And then talking about the try that Kwagga Smith scored, it was another really interesting play from the box. Manie Libbok did a crossfield kick. We've seen him do a lot of this for the Stormers and for South Africa in the past, haven't we? It was a fantastic kick. Who else was out there on the outside channel? Pieter-Steph du Toit, of course. Our favourite roaming flanker that stays out on the wing. But he was able to get the ball, and I thought he was going to score, but Ruben Love did a really good job to tackle Pieter-Steph du Toit, but Ruben Love was isolated from a defensive point of view, and Pieter-Steph du Toit was able to get the pass away to Kwagga Smith, and Kwagga went in for a fantastic try to the Springboks on that occasion. So great awareness from Manie Libbok, getting the crossfield kick in. Saw that Pieter-Steph du Toit was one-on-one with a smaller player. Thought Ruben Love did a good job. He did all he could. He tackled Pieter-Steph du Toit, but he had no other Kiwi support in defence out there, and Kwagga Smith had a pretty easy run into the line. So that was another brilliantly constructed try by the Springboks. And then we saw the try by R.G. Schneemann, and probably the most terrible try from an All Black fan perspective. It was a very soft try. He went through and broke through the middle of a ruck, and there was 4 or 5 All Black players around him, and they just basically switched off, and he went through for a very soft try. And at this stage of the game, this was me saying, well, this is an All Black team that hasn't got their will in the game today. They haven't got the passion, intensity they need. So whether Richie McCaw went in during the week and tried to fire these guys up, it didn't work, did it? Because they were standing around and they were caught out badly, and that was a bad thing to see from an All Black fan perspective at that particular point in the game. So another good try. R.G. Schneemann, he's good at this. I talk about it in my videos about South Africa. This is what this guy does. He has the ability to do these great little bursting runs. He's so difficult to bring down. And on that occasion, it looked like no All Black rugby player on the field at the time was interested in even trying to tackle R.G. Schneemann. So another good try for the Springboks on that occasion. And then the last try for the Springboks, their 6th in this particular game, it was to Andre Esterhuizen. But hang on a minute, it was a beautifully set up try by, first of all, Damian Willemse again, who did a great run down the left-hand side of the field. Grant Williams had come on and was on the wing in this game, and he just did a fantastic run, showing the pace and the sidestep that he has, that I've talked about a lot in my videos as a big backer of Grant Williams. And then the ball came into Andre Esterhuizen, who had a fairly good run to the line to get over with the All Blacks trying to cover him. So it was a good last try. I thought at that stage the All Blacks had basically given the game away. You could tell that their intent had fallen away quite substantially, which was very disappointing as an All Black fan. and it was the scoreboard was just running away completely now from the All Blacks. But the Springboks were too good. They were just too dynamic across the field. And I'm glad those players in particular were involved in that try, because Willemse for me was the man of the match. And Grant Williams coming on just showed the talent he's got. And boy, he was on the wing, and look what he did. He was able to complete and set up a very, very good try there for Andre Esterhuizen. So some other positives in this game from the Springboks, which there were a lot of. Manie Libbok's kicking I thought was really good. So for all those people in South Africa that were nervous before the game about Manie Libbok, and you may be giving him a hard time over the last 12 months, this guy's really come on. As a neutral rugby fan, I can sit here and say that Manie Libbok's confidence has gone up several checks, I think, because he's really, really good. He only missed one kick in the weekend, and he was able to slot all the others over. So good performance, but it's also his general play. He was kicking very well to put the All Blacks under a lot of pressure on that high ball. He did those very strategically, but he also opened up the back line for the South Africans. So they were able to play the 10-man game, they were able to play the 15-man game, and it worked out brilliantly in this particular game. My commiserations to Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu. Never good to go off in a game like this. It's one of the greatest games that the players look forward to in their rugby careers, playing the All Blacks in New Zealand. This was Sasha's first time in New Zealand, and it was unfortunate he had to go off with that HIA. I hope he recovers well, and we see him again when they play Argentina in South Africa. So it was a fantastic performance from the Springboks, and there's nothing I can say that can take away the great teamwork that was played by a lot of players. So I'm not going to sit here and give plaudits just to one, because I saw brilliance from Cheslin Colby, Damian Willemse, Ethan Hooker with that brilliant run, 40-45 metres, went through the All Black defensive line that was looking soft again. And but we saw great performances from people that came on, like Andre Esterhuizen, Jasper Wiese. We saw R.G. Schneemann playing great. We saw Quagga Smith do what Quagga Smith does when he comes on the field and really makes an impact. And when the All Blacks talk about their impact off the bench, that's what we've got to look at. Quagga Smith, he makes impact off the bench. That's what this guy does. He's not a giant. He's not 6'9". He's not 120 kilos. We don't need these players. We need players with skill and talent, and that's what Quagga Smith's got. And he comes on and he delivers every time nearly for the Springboks. So brilliant performance from him. I thought Captain Sia Kolisi had a brilliant game for the Springboks, one of the best I've seen him play for a long time. He was definitely up for this game. Peter Steph-Totoy was in it again, doing a lot of the hard work inside that ruck and maul. Ruan Norkia was getting plenty of line-out ball, and the front row, well, boy, did they just kill the All Blacks in that second half. Wilco Low again, absolutely brilliant stuff. Malcolm Marx had a good game this weekend, and Oxen Chair was just brilliant once again. So right across the board, it was the South African team playing together as a team, playing together as one on their game plan. They went to that high ball to disrupt the All Blacks, and when they got the ball back from that, they were able to play their expansive game and score some really, really good tries. Thoroughly impressed by the Springboks, and your fans should take away a lot of pleasure from seeing the Springboks play that type of rugby. They did. They beat the All Blacks at their own game, plus some more on top of that. Okay, All Black fans, it's time for me to talk some truths around our team and what went on in the weekend. Well, first of all, as I said, Noah Hotham going off was a big turning point for me, because he does give the Springboks defence another thing to think about with those runs from the base. It was only 9 minutes into the game. He hadn't really had a good chance to get into it. And Finlay Christie came on, and the whole perfection of the All Black attacking line went away from halfback. It was just he was there to get the ball out, and that's all he was going to do all day. So that was a concern for me, and it's something I've talked about so much in my videos, so I won't go on it too much more. But hopefully we won't see Finlay Christie there for much longer with these injuries coming right now to Roygaard, Ratama, and also Noah Hotham. So then the other thing that was highlighted for me in this game was Will Jordan had another bad game under the high ball. He was dropping the high ball, and this is something unusual that we haven't seen from Will Jordan before. And I think because the guy sets such high standards for himself and what he delivers for the All Blacks week in, week out, I think he's had two of the most poorest games I've seen him play in a black jersey against the Springboks in this series. And that's not something you say very lightly about Will Jordan. Will he come back from this? Of course he will, as will the All Blacks. But I just think that was something that needs to be talked about in terms of Will Jordan's ability under the high ball. It wasn't good at all. And then Damian McKenzie at fullback, I thought this was showing up a number of times throughout the game in terms of, yeah, he did a couple of things good. He kicked some goals over. But if you're going to have a fullback in the team, you need somebody who's bigger than Damian McKenzie starting this game. He got pummeled a couple of times under high balls from the Springboks. He caught the ball, nothing wrong with that. But he's just so small that he got absolutely pummeled by the guys that were coming through. And it gave the Springboks an opportunity to set up an offensive ruck and more to win the ball and win the steal over. So again, this is where I'm petitioning for Jordie Barrett to be put at fullback, someone of his height, or Ruben Love to come on and start the game in the 15 jersey. Is going to give us something a little bit bigger than what we're seeing from Damian McKenzie. So as I said before in my preview video, if Damian McKenzie is going to be in this All Black team, he needs to come off the bench as an impact player, and maybe he could have done something in the second half as a result of that could have changed the perplexing of the game after it was starting to get away from the All Blacks. We'll never know because he started the game at number 15. Billy Proctor, Jordie Barrett, it's still not working for me, is it? And probably for a lot of you. Quinn Tupaia came on, made that defensive error that led to Damian Willems' try. So still in my mind, I'm not comfortable at all with the 12 and 13 combination working well for the All Blacks. I thought Jordie Barrett did a couple of good things in the offensive line for the All Blacks in this game, but I just would love to see him at fullback. I think it would give a different look to the All Black team, and I think he would feel more comfortable and do a lot more attacking ability from the fullback position on Jordie Barrett. Beauden Barrett didn't really have the best of game either, and he was supported or not by Finlay Christie inside, so the back line for New Zealand wasn't very good. I think we've got to give Leroy Carter a little bit of leeway on his first game. Yeah, he scored a try, he made a defensive error, and maybe he looked a bit fragile in that area, but so did the whole All Black team. So you can't point it on Leroy Carter starting in his first All Black game. You know, he's got to get time to get the combinations right, to experience the defensive patterns, to know his role at this particular level within this particular team. So I'm not trying to make excuses for him. It's just a reality when you play your first game in a new team and getting to know these guys under match conditions. Yeah, of course, he's trained with them and all the rest of it, but playing a game against the world champions in this intensity, it's a different thing altogether. So I think we've got to give Leroy Carter a little bit of leeway in that. And then talking about the bench, well, what bench for the All Blacks? What did they do? Like, it was like non-existent. Brodie McAllister throwing into the line-out was just despicable. In fact, the moment he did his first throw into the line-out, South Africans ended up scoring a try from it. So it wasn't a good introduction for Brodie McAllister at all. And I didn't see any other difference from the All Blacks that coming in off the bench in terms of this game. So it was very disappointing across the board. The only shining light I think that was there was Fabian Holland. From his point of view, he came on and tried to get those line-out wins for the New Zealand team when the New Zealand line-out was going poorly. So we were pretty poor in scrums, we were pretty poor in line-outs, we were pretty poor in a defensive pattern. Our motivation and intensity in the second half was very poor. The passion for the black jersey didn't appear to be there at all. And I think a lot of you have said in the comments, and I'm agreeing with you, that the change in team that Russie put out because of this game from Auckland, it gave those players more energy, and a lot of these All Blacks were backing up, of course, after that very intense game in Auckland. And I don't think we should underestimate the impact of the mental and the psychological pressure the All Blacks were under at Eden Park and what that must have drained them all. So there must have been a huge amount of relief after that game for the All Blacks that played in that game. There must have been also a lot of physicality that they had to get over in terms of physical recovery, just because of the way the Springboks play. And then to turn around and have to do it again in Wellington, that's a big ask, and that's exactly what I think Russie got right. He brought in a lot of new players, a lot of fresh players, players that were hungry. They hadn't played in a test match for a while, and they went out there and they really delivered high intensity, and they were able to keep it going. I just thought the All Blacks in that second half, they fell away with tiredness, mental fatigue, physical fatigue. It was all coming out in that second half. That's not an excuse. I think that was a reality of what happened to that All Black team in the second half. Now, it's all very good for us Kiwis to make rational decisions about changes that we want to see, but a lot of impulsive thinking goes into this as well post-game, and I think we just need to calm down a little bit, and we need to really reflect on what happened in this game. I think what I just said in terms of the fatigue factor. I think that was a large part of this. I think our halfback combination was also a part of what happened. I think Damian McKenzie at fullback was part of what happened. Our poor defensive effort. We gave away too much ball. We didn't compete well in the scrums and the lineouts. So you put all those factors together and you come up with an answer. And the answer is that on this occasion, just like the Australians did to the Springboks at Ellis Park in Johannesburg, the game got away from the All Blacks. And in this particular environment that we're in at the moment, where these teams can turn it on any given day and get on a roll, that's what we saw. We saw a team in flow in the second half with the Springboks team. And there probably wasn't a team on the planet that was going to stop them when they get into that kind of flow. We've seen the Australians do it. We saw the Argentines do it again against Australia this weekend. This is what's happening in world rugby at the moment. We've got to accept that this is part of the game now. This is what happens against the intensity of these top teams. And like many of you are saying, in 2 weeks' time, the All Blacks could turn around and do exactly the same thing to the Wallabies at Eden Park, because that's the way that these games are going these days. And as rugby fans, we need to accept it and realise that this is what's happening at this level. So it can be a game of inches, a little bit of creativity here and there, and the whole game opens up, and that's what we saw in the second half. There were some fundamental things wrong with this All Black team that need to be looked at. And I'll start off by saying the post-match press conference is one of them. When I looked at Scott Barrett and Scott Robertson in that thing, I was disappointed. That's the word I'd use. I was disappointed. We'll learn from this. We'll keep our chins up. We'll come back. No. We've got some absolute positional issues in this team. Don't start the wrong people in the positions in the beginning of the game. That's what the problem is. Why wasn't Kyle Preston in this team for the All Blacks? Why did we have to rely on bringing a halfback on that doesn't play the right type of game against this competition? When we've got someone in the squad now who's got a great kicking game, he's great off both feet, he would have added another dimension to this All Black team, but we bring Finlay Christie on. So this is a responsibility of the selectors. They've got to get the right players on the field. We've all been talking about Lester Fainganuku. Why isn't he on the bench at least to come in and give the All Blacks some penetration off the bench? Because we're simply not seeing it from Quinn Tupaire. He scored a try last week, yeah, but what did he do this week? So we've got to look at things like that, whether or not we've got the right players. I applauded Razor for getting rid of Rico Ioane and Sevu Reece from this game, and that was the right call in my opinion. They wouldn't have made any difference to the outcome of this game in my opinion. So giving Leroy Carter the opportunity was the right thing to do, and he needs to be there again to build his confidence and show us what he can really do in the black jersey. But I think some of the older players for the All Blacks, they need to be looked at, and we need to be asking questions around them. So I'm sorry, I don't want to hear from an All Black coach and an All Black captain sitting there saying, we'll keep our chins up, we'll come together, we'll learn from what we do. No. We need to see a responsibility like Russie did. We played like dog shit. We were hopeless. We have got structural issues. We need to go away and hold players responsible and accountable for the way that they're playing in an All Black jersey. We don't want that press conference at the end of the game by Razor and by Scott Barrett indicated a lot to me what we saw in the second half from the team. Passive communication, no communication, a lack of desire, a lack of accountability. We've got to see the All Black structure and the culture in the All Black team get back to being accountable men again, tough Kiwi blokes that are getting in there and ripping the balls off their opponents out. That's what we've got to see again. And we're not seeing it in this All Black team. So I think we need to drop all these vocabulary around soft and caring and all this other fluffy stuff and get back to what makes New Zealand rugby the toughest, hardest rugby playing team in the world that we used to be. And that's my rant for this one. So yeah, it was extremely disappointing as an All Black rugby fan to see that performance in the second half. But it was great also from a general rugby fan to see a brilliant performance from the Springboks. So once again, congratulations to everyone associated with South African rugby. It was brilliant to see. It was also nice to see the Black Ferns have a win against South Africa later in the day. And we'll take 1-1 from this weekend. But in all seriousness, it was a brilliant game by South Africa. A lot of your players showed up, and it's going to be interesting now for me to see what Russie does against Argentina when it comes to his selections. Let's hope all those players that got injured in this game are going to get better very soon. I don't like to see any players from any team go off the field during a game. There was a lot of injuries in this game. I hope all those players are back sooner rather than later, and we can see them again plying their skills on the rugby fields across the world. So there you go, those are my thoughts around this game after I've had a little bit of time to think about it. Let me know in the comments now that you've had a little bit more time to think about it. I'm sure you've been watching a lot of content across YouTube in the last 24 hours talking about the game. What is your consensus now? What do you feel the All Blacks need to do? And what do you think South Africa's going to do as they move forward to their really interesting series against the Argentine Los Pumas? We're in for a very exciting rugby championship final rounds, aren't we? It's all to play for now. Australia, of all teams, are at the top of the standings at this point in time. But as we can all know, expect the unexpected, because round 5 and round 6 are going to be absolutely brilliant as well. Now, don't forget to join me for the live chat shows this week. As I said, we're going to be doing the South African ones in a more user-friendly time, and same for the Australians and Kiwis down under. And I look forward to talking rugby with you all during the week as well. Plenty more videos coming from me on Inside Rugby with Mark, so make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave your comments, give this video a like if you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again very soon from here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Until next time, it's adios from me. Bye for now.